Part 1. The Great Mystery of Consciousness. Picture this. You're sitting in a room, listening to this voice, feeling your own thoughts, emotions, maybe even memories rising in your mind right now. But here's the question that has left even the greatest scientists baffled. What exactly makes all of this possible? Consciousness is the greatest mystery of human existence. It's the foundation of who we are. Yet we have no simple explanation of where it truly comes from. Is it just a product of the brain? Electric impulses and chemical reactions firing inside our skull? Or is it something much greater, something that transcends science? Perhaps a fragment of cosmic energy, or even the mark of a soul? Throughout history, humanity has asked this same question again and again. Ancient Greek philosophers believed consciousness was a divine gift. In Eastern traditions, like Buddhism, it was seen as an endless stream existing beyond the body. And today, neuroscientists try to reduce it all to brain activity. Yet even they admit, there is no single explanation for how subjective experience can arise from physical matter. And this is where our journey begins. In this series, we will explore the most astonishing ideas and compelling evidence. Does the brain actually create consciousness, or is it more like a receiver, a television tuned to signals from another dimension? Could consciousness exist independently of the body? And does this mystery hold the key to understanding life after death and our true place in the universe? This question touches every one of us, because without consciousness, there is no self, no experience of life at all. So who are we really? Biological machines or spiritual beings traveling through space and time? Part 2. Science versus philosophy. Two ways of explaining consciousness. For centuries, two great forces have tried to answer the riddle of consciousness: science and philosophy. Yet, strangely enough, they often point in completely different directions. From the scientific perspective, consciousness is seen as something that emerges from the physical brain. Billions of neurons fire electrical signals, forming complex networks. Out of this activity, according to neuroscience, rises our sense of self, our thoughts, and our emotions. Researchers use brain scans to track activity when we dream, when we make decisions, and even when we feel love. It's an extraordinary achievement. But here's the catch. While science can map brain activity, it still can't explain why that activity creates the inner experience of being alive. Why should the firing of neurons give us the feeling of seeing colors, hearing music, or remembering childhood moments? Philosophy, on the other hand, asks a different question. What if consciousness doesn't come from the brain at all? For centuries, philosophers from Plato to Descartes have suggested that the mind is something beyond the material world, a soul, a spirit, or even a fragment of universal intelligence. Descartes famously declared, "I think, therefore I am." He believed the very act of thought proved that our essence was something separate from the body. And here's where things get fascinating. In today's world, the two perspectives are beginning to collide. Some scientists now openly admit that consciousness may not be fully explainable by biology alone. At the same time, philosophers are beginning to borrow language from physics and neuroscience to give their ideas more weight. So what if both are right? At least partially? What if the brain is not the creator of consciousness, but a filter or receiver, tuning into something larger, something cosmic? Imagine your brain as a radio, not generating the signal, but receiving it. When the radio breaks, the signal doesn't disappear. It's just no longer received. Could that explain phenomena like near-death experiences or memories of past lives reported by children around the world? This clash and possible union between science and philosophy sets the stage for a profound question. Are we just advanced biological computers, or something infinitely greater, plugged into the very fabric of reality itself? Part 3. The hard problem of consciousness. Why science is still struggling. In modern neuroscience, There's one question so difficult that researchers actually call it the hard problem of consciousness. The term was coined by philosopher David Chalmers in the 1990s, and it perfectly captures why the mystery of consciousness has remained unsolved despite incredible progress in brain science. Here's the issue. Science can explain a lot about the functions of the brain. It can tell us how neurons send signals, how the visual cortex processes light, and how chemicals like dopamine create feelings of pleasure or reward. These are what researchers call the easy problems. They're not literally easy, but they're solvable with experiments and data. But the hard problem is something very different. Why does any of this brain activity come with subjective experience? Why do we not only process information, but actually feel it? Why does seeing the color red trigger a sensation that seems so real, so alive, so personal? To make this clearer, think about your smartphone or computer. It processes millions of signals every second. It can recognize faces, answer your voice, and even beat you at chess. But no one believes your laptop is sitting there, feeling joy when it wins or sadness when it crashes. So why should the human brain be any different? Why should it come with an inner movie of sensations, emotions, and self-awareness? This is what scientists can't answer. Brain scans can show us where emotions appear in the brain, but they can't explain why you are the one experiencing them. They can show what parts of the brain light up when you see a sunset, but they can't explain why that sunset feels so breathtaking, almost spiritual, to you and not just a cluster of signals. Some thinkers argue that science might never solve this using traditional methods. They suggest that consciousness is not something that emerges from matter, but something fundamental, like space, time, or energy. In this view, consciousness isn't created by the brain. It's woven into the very fabric of the universe. The brain doesn't produce it, it simply channels it, the way a prism channels light. This radical possibility opens a doorway. If consciousness is fundamental, then everything in the universe might be conscious to some degree. Stars, plants, even atoms could have their own form of awareness, a theory known as panpsychism. It may sound wild, but remember, 100 years ago, the idea that solid matter was mostly empty space would have sounded just as insane. And yet, quantum physics proved it true. Could the next scientific revolution reveal that consciousness is not a late product of evolution, but the very foundation of existence itself? Part 7. Consciousness and the mystical experience. Do altered states open a hidden door? Throughout human history, people from every culture have reported profound experiences that seem to transcend ordinary reality. Shamans, monks, and mystics describe moments of unity with the cosmos, visions of other realms, and encounters with what they call the divine. But are these simply products of the imagination? Or do they reveal a deeper truth about the nature of consciousness? Altered states of awareness, whether through deep meditation, near-death experiences, or even the use of sacred plants, often bring a strikingly similar message. Consciousness is not limited to the brain, nor to the individual self. Instead, it appears to expand outward, connecting us to something vast and universal. Take, for instance, the phenomenon of the near-death experience (NDE). Thousands of people across the world report leaving their bodies, floating above hospital beds, traveling through tunnels of light, and encountering deceased loved ones or spiritual beings. What's most intriguing is how consistent these reports are, regardless of culture or belief system. Could this mean that consciousness is able to detach from the body entirely, surviving beyond the boundaries of death? Scientific research has begun to investigate these mysteries. Studies of patients whose brains had stopped functioning, yet who later reported vivid, detailed experiences, challenge the idea that consciousness is purely a product of neural activity. If the brain was offline, how could such clear awareness exist? Mystical states induced by meditation or prayer also reveal extraordinary insights. Experienced monks describe losing the sense of separation between self and world, entering a state where everything feels interconnected. In these moments, the boundaries of the ego dissolve, and consciousness seems to blend with the fabric of the universe. Neuroscientists studying meditators have found unusual brainwave patterns during such states, hinting that the brain might be tuning into frequencies of reality we don't normally perceive. Even more controversial is the role of psychedelic substances. Indigenous cultures have used plants like ayahuasca, peyote, and psilocybin mushrooms for centuries, often regarding them as sacred tools for accessing hidden dimensions. Modern research has shown that these substances can quiet the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for our sense of self, allowing people to experience a profound sense of unity, timelessness, and interconnectedness. But are these just hallucinations, or glimpses into another layer of reality? Some scientists suggest that our normal waking consciousness may be like a filter, limiting what we perceive in order to help us survive in the physical world. Altered states, then, could temporarily lift the filter, allowing us to access a broader spectrum of existence. This raises a startling possibility. Perhaps consciousness is not generated by the brain, but channeled through it, much like a radio tunes into frequencies that already exist. Mystical experiences, NDEs, and altered states might be evidence that our awareness can tap into realms far beyond the physical. And if that's true, it could mean that what we call reality is just one layer of a much larger, multidimensional spectrum of consciousness. Part 8. The collective mind. Are we all connected by a hidden field? What if your thoughts are not entirely your own? What if every idea, dream, or inspiration you've ever had was somehow linked to a vast, shared pool of consciousness? This idea, that all minds are connected through an invisible web, has fascinated philosophers, mystics, and now even modern scientists. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, called it the collective unconscious, a universal layer of the mind that contains symbols, archetypes, and wisdom shared across humanity. Jung pointed out how cultures separated by thousands of miles, with no contact, developed similar myths of sky gods, great floods, or underworld journeys. Could it be that human beings are drawing from the same hidden source of meaning? In the scientific realm, this idea has found echoes in surprising places. Physicist David Bohm suggested that the universe itself is like a hologram. Every part contains the whole, and nothing is truly separate. If that's true, then consciousness might also be holographic, each individual mind containing, and being contained within, the entire collective mind. Experiments seem to offer intriguing hints. The Global Consciousness Project, run by researchers at Princeton University, used random number generators placed around the world. These devices were designed to spit out unpredictable data, pure randomness. Yet during major global events, such as natural disasters, terrorist attacks, or moments of collective focus like New Year's Eve, the machines showed significant deviations from randomness. It was as if human consciousness, when united in mass attention, left an imprint on physical reality itself. Mystical traditions have long spoken of this interconnectedness. In Hindu philosophy, there is the concept of the Akashic records, an invisible library of all thoughts, emotions, and events, accessible to those with heightened awareness. Indigenous cultures often describe communication with ancestors or with the spirit of the earth itself, a reminder that consciousness is not confined to the individual, but part of a much wider living system. Even in everyday life, most of us have felt a glimpse of this hidden connection. You think of a friend, and suddenly they call. You and someone else speak the same words at the same time, or entire cultures seem to move in the same creative direction, as if inspired by a shared unseen force. Could it be that our brains are more like receivers than generators, tuning into a larger field of consciousness that surrounds us all? If so, The boundaries between my mind and your mind may not be as solid as we imagine. Instead, we might all be participants in one vast interconnected web, a cosmic internet of thought and awareness. This concept doesn't just sound mystical. It suggests a profound responsibility. If consciousness is collective, then our thoughts and emotions ripple outward, influencing the world around us in ways we can barely comprehend. Hatred, fear, and division may poison the field, while love, compassion, and unity could strengthen it. And if this hidden field truly exists, then we may all be far more powerful and far more connected than we've ever realized. Part 9. Consciousness Beyond Death. Does the mind survive? For as long as humans have existed, we've asked the ultimate question. What happens after we die? Is death truly the end of consciousness? Or does the mind live on in some mysterious way? Across cultures, religions, and even scientific studies, evidence suggests that awareness may extend beyond the body. Near-death experiences, NDEs, are among the most powerful testimonies. People who have been clinically dead, sometimes for minutes, often describe leaving their bodies, floating above hospital beds, or passing through a tunnel of light. Many encounter deceased relatives, or feel an overwhelming sense of peace and unity. What's more, some return with verifiable details they could not have known. Descriptions of surgical instruments, conversations in other rooms, or exact times events occurred. One of the most famous cases involves a woman known as Pam Reynolds. During a brain surgery in the 1990s, her body temperature was lowered to 60 degrees, her heartbeat and breathing stopped, and her brain activity went completely flat. By all medical accounts, she was dead. Yet she later described, in detail, instruments the surgeons had used, conversations they had, and even events happening outside the operating room. How could a brain with no measurable activity still produce conscious awareness? Scientists struggle to explain such phenomena. Some argue that NDEs are hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation or chemical surges in the brain. But many cases occur under conditions where hallucinations shouldn't be possible. The debate continues, but the mystery deepens with every testimony. Beyond near-death experiences, countless cultures have described the survival of consciousness. Ancient Egyptians believed in the Ka and Ba, aspects of the soul that lived on after death. Tibetan Buddhism teaches about the Bardo, a state between life and rebirth, where the soul journeys through visions before choosing its next existence. Indigenous traditions around the world describe the ongoing presence of ancestors, guiding and protecting the living. Modern research adds more weight to the question. Studies on reincarnation, particularly by Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia, document children who recall vivid past lives, including names, places, and circumstances later confirmed to be accurate. In hundreds of cases, the memories could not be explained as coincidence or imagination. There's also growing interest in the idea that consciousness might exist as a fundamental property of the universe, not dependent on the brain. If the brain acts like a receiver, much like a television, then death may simply mean the receiver stops working, but the broadcast continues. If this is true, then death is not an end, but a transition. Consciousness may move beyond our physical form, perhaps into other dimensions of existence we can barely imagine. This perspective changes everything. It suggests that our lives have meaning far beyond material survival, that what we do, feel, and think might carry forward in ways we cannot yet prove, but deeply sense. It means that love, memory, and awareness may outlast the body itself. And perhaps, in the end, consciousness doesn't belong to us individually at all, but to a greater, eternal mystery that continues long after our final breath. Part 10. The Final Mystery. Consciousness as the Fabric of Reality. After exploring ancient wisdom, quantum theories, mystical experiences, collective consciousness, and survival beyond death, we arrive at a startling conclusion. Consciousness may not just be a product of life. It may be the foundation of reality itself. Physicists and philosophers are beginning to explore the possibility that consciousness is not an emergent property of matter, but a fundamental aspect of the universe, like space, time, or energy. Some propose that reality itself could be a projection of consciousness, a cosmic mind, in which all physical phenomena arise. If this is true, every star, planet, and particle is, in some sense, a reflection of awareness. And we are not passive observers, but active participants in the creation of reality. Consider the implications. If consciousness shapes the universe, then our thoughts, emotions, and intentions are not trivial. They may ripple outward, influencing events, matter, and even the collective mind of humanity. Ancient mystics were right. Meditation, prayer, and focused intention may indeed connect us to forces far beyond what modern science can yet measure. Moreover, consciousness as the fabric of reality blurs the line between the material and the spiritual. The universe is no longer an impersonal machine, governed solely by physics, but a living, aware entity, in which we are inseparable threads. The stars we gaze at each night, the air we breathe, the life around us, all may be part of a vast, interconnected consciousness. This perspective also reframes our understanding of death, the mind, and existence itself. Life may be a temporary vessel, a lens through which universal awareness experiences the material world. Death may not be the end, but a return to the source. Every thought, dream, and memory could be contributing to the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. Even more provocative is the possibility that this awareness is not limited to humans. If consciousness is fundamental to the cosmos, then everything, animals, plants, even planets and stars, may possess some level of awareness. Reality may be alive, sentient, and deeply interconnected in ways that challenge our most basic assumptions. Ultimately, the mystery of consciousness is the greatest adventure of human exploration. Science, spirituality, and philosophy all converge at this frontier, hinting at truths that transcend disciplines. The more we investigate, the more we realize that we are part of something far larger than ourselves, an intricate, conscious universe, of which we are simultaneously observers, participants, and co-creators. As we continue to explore, question, and meditate, we may find that consciousness is not merely a phenomenon to be studied, but the very heartbeat of existence itself. And in that realization, perhaps we can glimpse the ultimate truth, that the universe is alive, aware, and inextricably linked to our own awakening.